With the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem, I would like to wish our Dhamma friends happiness and peace. Let us begin this evening Sutta study class. Those who join with us from Sri Lanka or elsewhere in the world, we also greet you with wholesome thought in mind. May your effort in the noble training would be fruitful by this effort you individually take, and also the support from the Kalyana Mitra in this Sutta study group. It is August 13, Saturday night, and we are going to begin our SEAL program tomorrow morning. So it is a wholesome, couple of days for us because of those lengthy program at our temple. So if anyone wish to be a part of the program, they are welcome to join. But I know that you all are busy with different kinds of meritorious deed while you do your household activities. So if you know the Dhamma from the discourses and also other sources, no need to have any external support. You can practice it in your own and bring the Dhamma into application. So friends, Sutta study class has selected a new discourse today. Last week we discussed Rattapala Sutta from Majjhima Nikaya, and this week we pay attention to another discourse in Majjhima Nikaya, that is number 149, and the sutta's name is Mahasalayathanika Sutta, the great sixfold base or exhortation. So this sutta is talking about the way we concentrate on six senses with wisdom. This sutta is really significant from my point of view because it teaches us the vipassana from what we already know, from what we can do in this discourse, with this discourse, is reflecting the six senses as they are. So that I can say here at the very beginning that there are a couple of easy ways for us to get into deeper Dhamma, and one is these six senses, because at least we feel eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body easily than the mind. And if we have enough understanding and practice in the Dhamma and Vinaya, it would not be that difficult to be mindful about the mind also. So in order to understand what upadana and how upadana begins, this is the very thing we need to focus. And in order to overcome upadana and bring our mind into peace and happiness, as the Buddha said, is also possible if one pays attention to the six sense medias and also six senses exactly as it is. So in my personal understanding, this is one of the easiest doors for us to Nirvana. So reading this kind of discourses is encouraging us and try to keep us on the Dhamma with sensory experiences, so that I think reading this kind of discourses is significant. You see that this sutta is found in the last section of the Majjhima Nikaya. As you know, there are only 152 discourses in Majjhima Nikaya, and this is 149, and it is in Salayatana Magga, the very section with 10 suttas, 12 suttas are named as Salayatana Magga. So basically, it talks about how to be mindful of the senses, how to train our mind on senses, and so on. So let's go into the discourse. I email you the translation by, as Bhikkhu Thanissaro, I believe. So it is easy for me to take the Pali version and also the translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi, so that you can follow the discourse as you already read it. The Buddha was living at the Savatthi as usual, and he addressed bhikkhus, and he explained the important message of the discourse like this: Bhikkhus, I shall teach you a discourse on the great sixfold base. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Bhikkhus also responded positively. And then the Buddha start this very remarkable statement. Because when one does not know and see the I as it is, as actually is, and when one does not know and see form as they actually are, when one does not know and see I consciousness as it actually is, when one does not know and see eye contact as it actually is, when one does not know and see as it actually is, felt as pleasant or painful or neutral, then that arises with eye contact here. Then one is inflamed by lust for the eye, for the form, for the eye consciousness, eye contact, feeling born from eye contact, and that is what happened. So it is too long, and you don't give a kind of breadth there. You have to read from the beginning to the end, the whole paragraph. But if you read carefully, you can get the meaning. This is the very things he said. When one does not know and see what is eyes actually is, it means we do not know. The two words are there to be understood very clearly. Janato passato, that is basically we mention in many discourses. Here Pali, ajanang apassang, ajanang if you do not know, and apassang if you do not see. This is not a simple knowing and also seeing. So I can see you if you open, or if you on your camera, it is also seeing, but it is not what we are talking about here. And ajanang, I know that you participate in the Sutta discussion. I can see your names. That is not what it means. Ajanang apassang, not knowing actually. I was explaining the opposite, of ajanang apassang. Here, ajanang means not knowing the truth of behind what we see. Not seeing the truth behind what we see is meant here. So if you look at those deep discourses like Samadhi Sutra, and then I can remember the suttas that the Buddha used. I do not tell this to any person who has not seen the Dhamma and not known the Dhamma. Means someone has to work on the Dhamma for some time, then only the Buddha or the enlightened beings speak about the deep Dhamma for their salvation. So certain Dhamma elements in the teaching are not taught to some ordinary people because they do not understand, they do not get the point. So that one has to get ready for absorbing deep Dhamma. So then only the Buddhas deliver such Dhammas. Here, when we say one does not know and see, means the deep meaning is there always. We have to know how eyes and form, eye contact, eye consciousness, eye contact, feeling born from eye arise accordingly, right? So one has to have some methodical and also very practical understanding about how these processes is going on. So that's the knowledge that we talk about here. That's the seeing that we talk about here. Ajanang apassang. Ajanang apassang yatha bhutang. The other word we should learn here is yatha bhutang. So that word emphasizes the very meaning of ajanang apassang again. Yatha bhutang means things as they are. We see people going from this direction to the other directions, and we see cars and vehicles, we see things happen accordingly. From conventional point of view, we can say this by usual names and concept and so forth. But when you say atabhutang, you do not say like that. You do not words. You do not use those concept and names. You put them in order to describe the situation. Use the only elements and also the way one understand things through with five aggregates and 6 sense bases and so on. So basically it is talking about vipassana. If you use the word yatabhuta, it means the entering into vipassana. The commentary says that this ajanang apassang or janang passang both are not talking about supramundane knowledge yet, but the laukika or something attached to this normal average human life is talking about. It means, according to Mahasalayathanika Sutta, this is laukika or mundane yatabhuta jnana, still a mundane sammaditthi, mundane observation in the very wholesome side, but the one who practice knowing and seeing is still in that level. So let us read further. Because when one does not know and see the I as it actually is, what is happening? When you do not understand I's form, eye consciousness, eye contact, and feeling out of it, what happened to you? We are infatuated with lust. The very Pali word we use here, sarajyati. What happened to us when we do not know the sensory object and sensory consciousness, contact, feeling, and so forth. Sarajyati, lust arises in our mind because we do not know. We do not see the truth behind it. As a result of this lust or craving or greed, tassa saratassa sanyuttassa sammulhassa asadanupassino viharato ayatim panchupadanakkanda upajayam gacchanti. The very danger we have here, because we do not know, we do not see, we do not understand what it is, so that our mind is expecting that lust, gluing nature of our mind, so that ignorance is working. This mind always goes to clinging, attachment, so that the rising of upadana or clinging or attachment is visible there towards what we see. We are still talking about the I and the process behind I and how upadana come into existence. So this is very clear for us because we have talked about this bit before, how upadana arises. Upadana arises when senses act accordingly. We cannot stop this process because we have to see things. We have to, use our eyes. But but if you use it without wisdom, without samadhi, without yoniso manasikara, what happened to us? A rising of craving, rising of upadana, is taking place there. So the sutta says, when one abides inflamed by lust, fettered, infatuated, contemplating gratification. So when you wish to have craving out of seeing, out of using your eyes, you enjoyed it. Sarajyati, asadanupasino. You are searching for gratification on what you see. As a result, you are in aggregate of of clinging. 5 aggregates of clinging, so that your future, your present moment, and also your future become muddled and also ignorant. Once craving, as a result of this upadana, what happened? Craving, which has the renewal of being, and accompanied by lust and delight, and come to increase. So tatra abhinandini, nandiraga sakara, these are the very word the Buddha used to describe craving. So the craving is something that always arises when there is delightness through sensual experiences, and it comes to be because of this clinging or attachment arises due to unmindfulness or unwise attention on seeing. So when your mind is infatuated, inflamed by lust, clinging arises. As a result of this clinging, you are going to have craving again. According to Paticcasamuppada, you see craving arises right as a basis of feeling. Because of craving, clinging arises. But here, the way the Buddha explained that this is how upadana arises, and upadana makes craving again. So when there is craving, we know the formula now. Once bodily and mental trouble increase, once bodily and mental torment increase, once bodily and mental fevers increase, and one experiences bodily and mental suffering. Due to the increase of craving and also attachment, we know that we have to experience utmost suffering with all kinds of burning issues. In the Dhammapada, this witness very clearly with the stanza Tanhaya Jayati Soko, Tanhaya Jayati Bhayang. So with craving, one experience suffering and also fear. Those who have gone beyond tanha never experience suffering and fear. So this is what the Dhammapada says. And elsewhere in the Tripitaka, so the same thing is emphasized over and over just to show us the danger of, padana and also craving. The very important thing here in this passage of the sutta is the way craving and also clinging arises. Do you think that now we cannot understand the arising of upadana, arising of craving? It is very clear, friends. It is happening in this sensory experience. When we see pictures, we see things clearly, and if there is unmindfulness, unwise attention, and proper investigation into what we see, that is the moment that attachment could arise. That is the moment that craving come into existence. In elsewhere, we say rupa is there and form eye is there, then eye consciousness come into existence, and then what happened? Immediately abhinandati abhivadati ajjosayati. So we are seeking delightness of what we see, and we are of course increasing what we enjoy now by talking, by sharing, and then ajjosayati means the arising of craving. We actually hold on to what we see and what we like, so that the problem is being created there for suffering. The seed of the suffering is created in that process of thinking, because we let our mind enjoy what we see. So having said this, the Buddha talk about the way clinging or attachment arises through ears, nose, tongue, body, and also mind. So I think this is why this discourse is named as Mahasalayathanika Sutta. The way the clinging, the whole problem of suffering arises is taking place when one uses senses unmindfully and unwisely. So this is why I think the Buddha named this discourse as Mahasalayathanika Sutta. So here Buddha talks about the other senses also. I recommend you to, not to read the discourse, leaving those etc. things. The word etc. is used in the books, in the discourses, to minimize the pages, and also not to make readers boring. But when it comes to Dhamma, just take that chance. Don't go away from, because this is why this is the reason why I say this. people may investigate the Dhamma with the first sense always, eyes. Sometimes they goes to ears, but we are not talking about the way tongue and body and mind works, and that time that we use for analyzing the tongue and body and mind would be useful for some characters to get the Dhamma more than the analysis of eyes, ears, and tongue, nose. So I just want to make that point. When you do meditation on this kind of things, in the name of vipassana, you do not use etc., etc., so and so, but you go into each senses and see what is going on. If you take Indriya for your vipassana meditation, you may hear the sound and you see the impermanence of the ear and the sound, then the ear consciousness, then probably you look at the contact and also feeling. If possible, you go to other senses, how they come to support the hearing and make things arise. So the one who does vipassana with full attention, full concentration, does that kind of investigation taking time. So if you do vipassana on this aspect, I encourage you to do the same thing. So the time you use would be useful and the end results would also be extraordinary then. So here the Buddha talks about the same thing with the other senses. Basically Buddha shows first that if one does not see and know, as I said earlier, it is not just mundane seeing or mundane knowing. It is yatabhuta, knowing things from the bottom of something, knowing seeing things not from your eyes but from your mind, which is geared by wisdom. So that they emphasize that the importance of the seeing and also knowing. And if one does not see and see, this is what happened. Upadana and craving arises, and at the end you have whole mass of suffering. Now the Buddha talks about the opposite direction. If one wants to stop craving and before that attachment, this is the thing you need to do. When one knows and sees the I as it actually is, and also form, eye consciousness, eye contact, feeling from eye contact, there you do not have flame infatuation by seeing, right? So when you know what is happening in seeing, you are going to create some peaceful state. You are not having that raga or nandiraga or other subtle level of attachment arises, so that we cannot pinpoint the clinging in our mind, because we have seen and also we have known what is going on in our action of seeing. So this has been clear connection with ditte dittamattang, sute sutamattang. This has connection with other discourses in Kanti Samyutta of Samyutta Nikaya, where the Buddha talks about the vipassana bhavana with chakku, sota, gana, jivha, kaya, mana. Wherever you find six senses and their sensory experiences, you found that the Buddha talks about the same thing for different individuals. So now we know exactly what we need to do to end craving. When one knows and sees the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind and their respective objects exactly as they are, you of course come to an understanding on eye consciousness, contact, feeling, and so forth, so that you can take decisions not to allow your mind for upadana. None of the upadana come into existence, such as kamupadana, dittyupadana, silabhatupadana, and arthavadupadana. None of them arises in your mind because you have put wisdom or Samadhi into application at the very outset of seeing, so that you see who you are and what you see, and you see in a summarized version that this is impermanent, this is not holding on to, and so that there is no chance in your mind to craving, attachment. As a result, when one abides uninflamed by lust, unfettered, uninfatuated, contemplating danger, earlier you see asada, you see gratification, you are going behind gratification. Now you see the danger of gratification, so that the five aggregates affected by clinging are diminished for oneself, diminished of oneself in the future. So if we are able to put this practice into our mind, so that the next accompanied with delight and love, there is no such thing in your mind. So that as we know, suffering is totally abandoned. Suffering is going to end. So it's a very clear message. So having said this, the Buddha added here, the view of a person such as this is right view. See, if we understand the senses and their respective processes with the mind as it is, as they are, that is right understanding. How we fit this explanation into Samadhi Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. Buddha talks about Salayatana there. If you look at the Samadhi Sutta, Venerable Sariputta explained 16 ways of Samadhi. So one of these is Salayatana. It is found in the middle of the 16 ways. So when you have Samadhi on Salayatana, it does mean that you understand the Salayatana as they are. So when you know Salayatana as they are, it includes that they are respective objects, consciousness, contact, and feeling, and so forth. So when one has this kind of understanding, it is right understanding of that person. His intention is right intention. So when there is Samadhi on Salayatana, his view is okay now, and his intention is perfect. That means Samma Sankappa has also arisen accordingly. Nekkhamma Sankappa, Avyapada Sankappa, Avihimsa Sankappa. As example, we can see that Nekkhamma Sankappa. So it means the thought of renunciation. When you have Samma Sankappa, right intention on with right understanding, you do not want to attach to things you see and hear, because your very intention is to let go of things. So that is your right intention or right sankappa or sankalpa, so that his effort is also become right. Now his effort is always to let go of unskillfulness that have not yet arisen. And if there is any unskillful thoughts, your effort is working to overcome them, and your whole effort is to bring wholesomeness and to maintain it. So when you look at your senses and their respective processes, you develop Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, and Samma Vayama. See what the Buddha said right after. His mindfulness is right mindfulness. Now he is of course ardent and also alert to check what is going on in senses and sensory experiences and so forth, so that he has now right mindfulness. when there is right mindfulness, we know that his concentration becomes straightforward and wholesome. Therefore, he or she has samadhi also. But his bodily action, his verbal action, and his livelihood have already been well purified earlier. So Buddha added there right after the statement about the concentration and mindfulness. His right words and right action, right livelihood were established well before this. Right, mindfulness and concentration. So, thus, this noble eightfold path comes to fulfillment in him by development when he developed the noble eightfold path. So, yeah, I have to stop here just to explain the necessary thing there. So, we see that this way, this particular person can develop the noble eightfold path entirely. So, where do we start? We start the practicing noble eightfold path by knowing the six senses as they are and their respective objects, such as rupa, sabda, gandha, rasa, sparsha, and then their consciousness and contact and feeling. So when you know these sets of, according to Chachaka Sutta, you are going to be known these six sects, so that you have right understanding samadhi. When there is samadhi, other factors come into maturity, like samadhi. So this way you have not only started, you have of course practiced the noble eightfold path entirely, and as a result of development of noble eightfold path in us, in this way we see from the discourse that all the other enlightened factors of the 37 factors of enlightenment come to maturity. So this is again showing us that we need to take one set of practice, for example, six senses, so that we can enter into the noble eightfold path, and we come across other enlightened factors of the 37 factors of enlightenment. So let me read that part. When he developed this noble eightfold path, the four foundation of mindfulness also come to fulfillment in him by development. The four right kinds of striving, and then four bases of his spiritual powers, and then five spiritual faculties, five spiritual powers, and the seven factors of enlightenment come to fulfillment in his.
We can't hear when it was.
Get some issues. I think that is why you could not hear. Right now, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Now
yes.
you can hear. Yes. Please be mindful that there is a problem in our internet connection. I saw a message in the screen that the internet connection is weak or poor, something like that. That is because of this problem going on. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, you don't miss many things, even if the stream is weak, because you have heard about this before, and this is a kind of reminder for some people so that you don't miss. Anyway, what we discuss is that we started the training with something we know. We all know how our senses work. Those who have started the training for some years, for many years now know how to practice the training of the Dhamma in this manner to get into enlightened factors. Maybe you are not in the enlightened factors sustained yet, but you know the path very clearly. That is very important. So now we go to the next section of the discourse quickly. These two things, serenity and insight, samatha and vipassana. Let me get the Pali term for that. Tasime dve dhamma yuganadda vattanti samatocha vipassana. These two things, serenity and insight, occur in him york evenly together. So when you understand the whole process of noble training now, you have been practicing both samatha and vipassana together. Let me tell you this again. When you become mindful and wise about the sensory experiences as a whole, you saw that how the Noble Eightfold Path is being practiced in that observation, so that the practicing of the other 29 enlightened factors are also coming into maturity slowly. And this is nothing but practicing samatha and vipassana. So friends, whenever you observe the senses as anicca, dukkha, and anatta, whatever way, it is samatha and vipassana meditation together, right? Even now you think about it with my words or with your own reading. You are slowly understanding my eyes, my ears, my tongue, my nose, my body, and my mind, and everything come through those senses are impermanent, anicca, dukkha, anatta. They are transitory, they are uncertain. So that what you do there with this analysis is, developing samatha and vipassana together. So here Buddha said clearly, these two things, serenity and insight, occur in him york evenly together. He fully understands by direct knowledge those things that should be fully understood by direct knowledge. He abandoned by direct knowledge those things that should be abandoned by direct knowledge. He develops by direct knowledge those things that should be developed by direct knowledge. And he realizes by direct knowledge those things that should be realized by direct knowledge. So what we have here is the formula of the Four Noble Truths. So when you have samatha and vipassana together, you are going to understand not just mere, assumption or type of theoretical knowledge, but direct knowledge. It means the single word we use is pratyaksha. The Pali word is you are going to know from your own experience, paccavekkhana. So you see it. Pacchattam veditabbo vinyohiti. In the stanza we recite to respect the Dhamma, we have pacchattam veditabbo vinyohiti. It is not somebody else's experience, it is your own seeing, it is your own understanding, so that we use the word direct knowledge. The very word we use sachikatabba. So again, you see the internet problem. I think it will be solved automatically in a short period of time. So with samatha and vipassana, you are having now direct knowledge. You're having now direct experience about the impermanence and dukkha and anatta, so that you know what has to be known by direct knowledge, and you of course abandon what has to be abandoned. You of course then develop what has to be developed, and then you realize what has to be realized. So if you look at the Four Noble Truths with those terms, parinyaya, parinyatang, pahatabbang, Pahinang Sachikatabak, you see the connection of this teaching to the Four Noble Truth. So in the Pali, we have this Katamecha Bhikkave Dhamma Abhinya Parinyaya. So what things should be fully understood by direct knowledge? What things are there should be fully understood by direct knowledge? The answer to that is the five aggregate affected by clinging. That is the material form aggregate affected by clinging, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. These are the five things that should be fully understood. We don't have anything to do except understanding about the reality of five aggregates and also clinging to five aggregates. In Four Noble Truth, with dukkha, what we have to do? Parinyayang, idang dukkhang ariya satchang. This is the noble truth of suffering. And parinyayang, this has to be understood. And the Buddha finally said, and even Arahant said at the end, we have understood it fully. So with suffering, you do not do anything. But in the common average society, what do people do? They try to avoid suffering just by taking suffering itself, but it doesn't happen. For example, if you have suffering, if you have problems in your mind, mental problem or physical, so you are worried about. So you try to overcome it just by treating the suffering itself. It doesn't happen. You have to treat the cause of suffering. Then only the suffering is alleviated. Suffering is overcome. So here Buddha clearly said that what you have to be understood, what you have to understand is five aggregate affected by clinging. Isn't this connecting with the word Sankittena Panchupadanakkhandha dukkha? If I say every suffering in one word, quoting Buddha's word, that is the five aggregate affected by clinging. At the end, friends, jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, vyadipi dukkha, and all kinds of dukkha could be included into Panchupadanakkhandha dukkha. So even with one phrase, idan dukkhang ariya satchang Panchupadanakkhandha dukkha, it means everything. When the Buddha said in Patisampada, whole mass of suffering starting from ignorance to jati jara vyadi marana, so all these suffering could mean with one word Panchupadanakkhandha dukkha. This is the very fact we need to understand with suffering. So if you do not have suffering, clinging to five aggregates of clinging, whole mass of suffering is gone. So that is what we need to understand. The five aggregates affected by clinging as they are. Then, and what things should be abandoned by direct knowledge? So we talk about something abandoning with direct knowledge. So earlier we talked about with direct knowledge, understanding. When one comes to the stage of training, he or she has a very clear, lucid mind, calm mind, and his whole effort is to understand what is going on. Basically, his understanding is working on five aggregates and any attachment to five aggregates. If there is attachment, he is working or she is working to seize that attachment. So then what with direct knowledge now, what is going to abandon? Let's see. Ignorance and craving for being. Ignorance and craving for being. Let me read the Pali one. Katamecha bhikkave dhamma abhinya pahatabba avijjacha bhavatanhacha ime dhamma abhinya. So two things should be abandoned, and that is avijja and also craving that renewed our cycle of suffering. So these are the two things. In other places of the Tripitaka, we see how the Buddha defined the avidya and also tanha as the mother and the father. The mother and the father can create a new baby with their unison, so that the mother and the father are considered very important for mundane world. And when it comes to spiritual understanding, mother and father are being compared to avidya and tanha, because it is the very beginning of the cycle of birth and death. So avidya and tanha should be abandoned. So if you go back to the beginning of the discourse, we say that avidya is there about the senses, sensory experiences, and consciousness, and so on, so that we see how clinging arises, and also craving is being renewed again with the support of clinging, and suffering is there as a result. So in one end we have avidya, and the other end we have craving. Both support each other. But right after that, if the Buddha said that if you know and see what exactly these senses and their respective processes, there is no avidya, because you see and you know, so that craving also is not being developed, because you see everything. So total opposite of avidya and also craving have been implemented, so that the problem is solved. So that what has to be abandoned is avidya and tanha, that is very opposite of peace and happiness. Next, what things should be developed by direct knowledge? So if you have direct knowledge, then what you have to develop is serenity and insight. So the one who get the direct knowledge, a type of clear, mundane samadhi, he or she should use it to develop samatha meditation and also vipassana meditation together, in order to take that very person into the conclusion. So samatha and vipassana should be practiced with direct knowledge. Do you remember that the Buddha said the first thing a disciple should do is maggang sanjayati? Perhaps some people talk about Dhamma, some people engage with the Dhamma related activities, but I'm sure that many people have not found the Magga yet. Finding Magga means you know exactly what you should do in the Dhamma and Vinaya. Vinaya is also should be practicing while you apply the Dhamma in day-to-day life. Sometimes people disregard Vinaya. Vinaya means not those, not only those, 127 for monks and so forth. You have also Vinaya rules. It could be, 5 principles, 8 principles, 10 principles. Not only that, Indriya Sangvara, and when you use mindfulness when you eat and also do other things. So these are type of Vinaya for you to practice. And when you practice Vinaya, Dhamma is also planted on the basis of Vinaya. So they are like the railroad. There should be 2 lines in order for the train to go forward and backward. Otherwise, the train is not working. Like that, one has to have Dharma and Vinaya together, so that Samatha and Vipassana come into experience, and the direct knowledge is being practiced clearly. So Samatha and Vipassana actually happening together in the entire teaching. You do not see the division of Samatha and Vipassana as 2 separate practices, but it comes to the Sasana later on with so many analysis. I'm not saying that that is wrong. Dividing Samatha and Vipassana are not wrong, but we do not see that division in the discourses very much, except few places like Yuganatha Sutta and elsewhere like this Sutta. So when you take the Noble Eightfold Path into your mind as a means of meditation, you have been taking both Samatha and Vipassana together. As said in this discourse, you take the senses into your application, to your analysis, so that you have been in Samatha and Vipassana together. So when the Buddha talks about development, he talks about Samatha and Vipassana for direct knowledge. In other words, with direct knowledge, you further pay attention to the development of Samatha and Vipassana. Now we come to the last one. That is, what things should be realized by direct knowledge. So why direct knowledge is important at the end? For what we need to realize with direct knowledge. True knowledge and deliverance. That's Vijja and Vimukti. With direct knowledge, we have to realize or Satchikatabba, the Vijja Vimukti. So when you do the first one, second one, and third one, there is this true knowledge, Vijja, and when there is Vijja, when you, in other words, when you see everything as it is, with the cultivation of all kinds of wholesome qualities, yeah, you do nothing but removing yourself from problematic situation of your mind. You can end that craving completely. That is called vimukti, because you see everything and you don't want to hang on to it. That power is there for you to take decision. Right now, we may be talking about the facts, that how one deliver himself from craving to non-craving state. But when you come to that particular level, you don't want to say, how do you do it? You know yourself what exactly I should do to release myself. That is what happening. You, except one or two very rare incident, every arahant who, of course, attain to that level, did it themselves. I hardly remember one or two stanzas that the Buddha intervene because the very person who practiced the Dhamma may be going somewhere else instead of final deliverance, so that the Buddha appeared in a not in person but with psychic power and tells, okay, you should do this, you should this way, you should think this way, and so on. But majority of arahants, whether they are bhikkhus and bhikkhunis or lay people, they of course delivered their mind into total peace and happiness themselves, because they see what they are doing. So Satchikatabba is totally individual things, and they do it when the other three things are completed. What are the three things? You know what has to be known very clearly, and then you abandon what has to be abandoned, and you have what do you call, develop what has to be developed, so that Satchikatabba is done. So having said this, now Buddha come to the last part of the discourse. When one knows and sees when one knows sorry. So far the Buddha talks about seeing from eyes and form, eye consciousness, and so forth. So if we become mindful about our eyes, form, eye consciousness, eye contact, and then feeling born from eye, these are the procedure we do to the end of the training. So we practice both samatha and vipassana. Of course, well before that we have put and stop for clinging, then craving, then there is no suffering. So you are partially and also up to a greater extent getting away from suffering, so that you have come across the Noble Eightfold Path. It means you have also started completing the other enlightened factors. With samatha and vipassana meditation, you understand the suffering as a whole, and then you can of course stop suffering into a great extent, and you are still continuing your training, so that you are getting that direct knowledge with direct knowledge, you complete your training. So with regard to ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, you can do the same thing. That is what the Buddha said at last of this discourse. So that is the end of Mahasalayathanika Sutta. The reason why the Buddha said this particular piece of Dhamma, Mahasalayathanika Sutta, because the Buddha shows us how one start the training with senses and their respective processes, and how he or she end his training with the attainment of direct knowledge and then Vijja Vimutti. In other words, one start the training with senses and complete the entire the noble eightfold path and also other set of teaching, and as a result they complete the understanding of the four noble truth by realizing everything. So that is why, in my understanding, why this discourse is named as Mahasalayathanika Sutta. So now we will discuss the Dhamma special point of the sutta, so that you have the opportunity. So as usual, I can see Dr. Pial has raised his hand. Please take your time, Doctor.
The Bhante, this sutra is very significant because not only this, even Samyutta Nikaya, there is a whole group of sutras talking about the senses that is called Salayatina Maggavagga. So I think there's very detail of the six senses, how they work. And in one case, it says one is incapable of destroying suffering without knowing and fully understanding the all here means the six senses. So in other words, unless you really understand how these senses work and directly realizing how we create our suffering, we may not be able to disengage our suffering, or get out of our suffering. So in other words, I think the one of the key things in learning or contemplating Dhamma is the six senses, because without the six senses, there is no world. Like that is the starting point of everything. Even the aggregates are a product of the senses, right? The eye causing feeling, the perception, again, in the mind creating an object, right? A rupa. So in other words, these are the byproducts, what we cling to, the aggregates as a result of these senses. So it's very important to have a clear understanding of how eye conscious contact when we contact, we feel what we feel, we perceive, what we perceive, we think about. When we think about, that is come the Madhyamaka Sutra, and we think what we think about, we cling with. In other words, with our prapanya, we thinking about it, we cling to one of these aggregates, and that's cause of suffering. So I think the sutra, beginning, it's interesting how start about the ayatana, the six senses. Suddenly, it tries to tie up everything with the noble eightfold path, and it's get a bit confusing at the end. But I think he's trying to tie up everything, the whole entire 37 factors of enlightenment, 37 bodhipakshaka dhamma, as well as at the end, I think also talks about the eightfold path, as well as giving right knowledge and right release at the end. So the 10 fold factors also included at the end. Basically, although he's not directly talking about it, right knowledge and right release is jnana, samma jnana, samma vimukti. I think also ties into that. So, but it's the important thing is to understand the beginning, rather than the end will come if you clearly understand how we create this suffering. And if we know how we see it, we should be able to get out of it too at the same time. But we have to see it within, right? In an individual self. Does it make sense?
Oh, of course, yes. What you said is very interesting. Buddha has tried, and of course he has done, taking all the Dhamma facts into this sutra by adding the Noble Eightfold Path and the 29 factors of enlightenment, and he indirectly talks about the Four Noble Truths as well, and what one gets when this kind of Dhamma analysis is done is the qualities of Nirvana. So everything is in one discourse because you start the training with senses and you see the impermanence. You cannot stop attachment and craving from sensory experiences unless you know them. So the very important thing Buddha did here is that he showed how the practice of Noble Eightfold Path is taking place when you consider the senses and their respective processes. What you said is very important. Again, this shows that the training of Dhamma is not that difficult for us to begin, of course. We can begin it by observing your own senses and what happened to our mind when sensory experiences started coming in. So if we are taking care of these things, it is your Sammaditi, it is your Samma Sankappa, it is your Samma Vayama, so that other path factors also come to support, and it is in your mind. Now you of course use your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind exactly. You do it, but your observation has been Dhamma centered because you have some outlook, you have some very important insightful observation, because Samma Ditti and Samma Sankappa, Samma Vayama and all the other things have been in application. So the best thing we can do with this course is starting the observation of senses and their respective things as they are.
And the ultimate goal, I guess, is say, for example, I think you mentioned that Maha Sutra Ditta Matang. So when you see an object, you see, I mean, that is probably the ultimate goal of where we stop at contact. In other words, without going to feeling. Once you go to the feeling, then dislike, likes come, and then start craving and all this attachment, all the whole work start processing. So when you see, when you see and you drop it, when you as you see
think,
right now when you're hearing,
Dr. Pial got disconnected.
Yeah.
While he comes.
When you can you see? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now, the problem
so,
is mine. Now,
Bahia,
now I can.
Maha Sutra. So, I mean, there is other Mahasalayathanika Sutta. It talks about the same thing. When you hear, you wonder what his meaning is. It's like all condensed in the short discourse, right? But in other words, he's trying to say, because once you start seeing, the process of seeing can create the whole array of all these mental processes. So when you see, you only see without seeing the anuvyanjana. In other words, the details of what you're seeing. And then when you start seeing details, then your craving kind of arises. Abhinandati, Abhivadati, Ajosadi, they all start all the proliferating all the beauty of it, or color, or the details. And that's where you start clinging whether you like this life. So in other words, if you can stop, it's kind of hard. I guess that is the goal. In Arahat, you see, you drop it. You hear, you drop it. You don't need to really get into further. I mean, that's where we get caught, like with our ignorance. Yeah.
Very true. Thank you. So Chandrani, Nona, you can take your chance.
Anyway, sir, it's about the knowing of the six sense bases. The thing is, we have been born with it and we live with it, we use it, and we have the wrong view. Samadhi is very essential here, because all of us, what happened is we have a wrong view of these six sense bases. When we say it is impermanent, sometimes they think impermanence means that it get decayed and maybe the sight will go off. It's deeper than that. And I read in one sutta that it goes that it comes up immediately as Chitta Chaitasika, then again it comes up, then again it comes up, non-stop it is coming up. But we don't see these things, we don't see the cause and effect of it, how the eyes come into action. We think the eye is this muscle here, which is not. And we try to see the impermanence in the wrong thing because we have not that Samadhi, which Sariputta Thero talks about in Samadhi Sutta. In that, he says that we should know how it comes to be and how it passes away, and the cause and samudaya and the magga. So without knowing really, we'll be just playing with them. And the other thing is, there is an orderly manner which you mentioned, that sila is essential, vinaya is essential, all the other equipments are essential, like pancha indriya and all those should be developed. And then samatha vipassana is essential. And still, we first let go the view that we have, the Sakkaya Ditthi view, which covers the 5 clinging aggregates. And then we can get rid of that and experience the Nibbana, at least the Nibbana level of the mind. Then you get erased off. Then only you can think of the rest. I don't think without getting that clearance, it is possible for anyone to go beyond, because Buddha showed us a progressive way of development. So I think we have to go into a deeper understanding of this than what we think we do. That is what I have to say. I hope you agree with it.
It is true. This is a map of Nirvana, actually. In the entire sutta, if you look at the sutta, you see how one starts from somewhere he or she does not know. It's okay. You start with not knowing much of it. But you believe on the Buddha that he said the right thing, and what he has already told us is kind of wholesome Dhamma. So if one does not know much about all these things, he or she has to put the faith on somebody who knows. So let's say that he or she start the training from such end, and slowly, little by little, he or she can understand the progress of his training. For example, the one who was in utter mess of life with so many bad things now get into clear life because he practiced sila, he listened to Dhamma, he goes to temple on daily basis and do usual activities. So now he finds some kind of enjoyment on the wholesome framework. So little by little he listened to the first Dhamma discourse of the Buddha and what exactly the Buddha did in his life and how Arahants come into that position. So he or she collects knowledge slowly, little by little, and there are some energy developing in him or her further for him or her to take some other training. Like that, the people begin the training, and when it comes to Salayatana analysis, it is not for such people. Actually, Salayatana meditation, exactly as the Buddha said here, could only be done by someone who has already started the training with mindfulness practice, and at least this is the case. You have to understand how these 6 senses work. For example, otherwise you do not know. We have found a lot of people who do not see, who do not know what exactly happened in our mind. They know that there is mind, there is body, and in order to attain Nirvana, they have to practice actually the Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, and they do dana. They go on pilgrimage, and they do this kind of. So in terms of practicing Buddhism, a lot of people do various things, but they do not know the path for nirvana exactly as it is. But the one, so in this discourse, we should understand that, as you said, janato passato means, or janang pasan means not knowing only these cultural, religious-based practices, but he or she has to come to this understanding how the mind and body works together in this level. Then only you can develop develop noble eightfold path in your mind by this observation. And then samatha and vipassana also are understood clearly. And when now you know the path where you go and what you do in this training. So samadhi is achieved time to time just to boost your training. And then not only sitting meditation you do, even in talking, in walking, in other mundane activities, you do vipassana just to protect your mind from unwholesomeness, and also to maintain your wholesome qualities. I agree with what you said. This sutta talks about something very simple, but when you come to the real training, it's not just mere understanding about senses, but some sort of deep understanding.
Exactly. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So anybody else who would like to say something, please take your time. Of course, it is very clear that we have to practice here the mindfulness, samadhi, right understanding. We have to put our whole effort in it. Otherwise, the severity of the function of ignorance is there always. The ignorance, craving do not need any support or to work on. They are working always. But in order to bring panya and also non-greed mind, we have to work hard. So Tarek, after a long time, I guess you are here. I don't know whether you were here last time. Anyway, nice to have you back. So you say in the chat box, when we see for the sake of acquiring and feeding, acquiring or feeding on sight, we will suffer. Yes, definitely. When we see what pitiful food this yields, the dispassion that arises result in seeing without feeding. Is it that we are two-faced in our practice? We want our sense feeding. We want our sense feeding, but claim we want enlightenment. Let me read it again. When we see for the sake of acquiring and feeding on sights, we will suffer. Yeah, if you have that essence in mind that I want to see this and I want that, I want this, of course, you have nothing but suffering, because with wanting, with the need of acquiring, you of course develop the seed of suffering definitely. When we see what pitiful, food this yield, the dispassion that arises resulting in seeing without feeding. Does that mean that we see unpleasant things on food, or unpleasant things on things we experience, so that we can find this dispassion? Dispassion means virag. So when you really see how negative they are for our mental training, the wise people always take out of those things. The wise people can take their mind out of craving, so that it's called virag. Yeah, if you see the danger was danger of something you are hanging on to, you can have dispassion. You can develop dispassion, nibbida. Atanibbindati dukkhe samaggo visuddhya. If you analyze things as they are and see the danger of them instead of the gratification, asada, you do dispassion there, virag. Is it that we are too? Yes, let's say that one person is understanding everything as it is, and the other person is not understanding like that. So one person is ignorant, the other person is wise. So both see one thing, right? So, but the analysis is different. The way of appreciating the things they saw is different. The one who is not knowing anything about the Dharma would appreciate the, seeing with lust, with greedy mind, either with hate and so forth. But the wise one knows that everything is created in mind, and what we see is only elements and so on, so that impermanence is clear to him, so that he is not getting too attached to it. It means he has viraga, while the other person has raga. So yeah, we have two phases. We have two sections with one thing. It depends on, I think, with the understanding of the particular person. We want our sense feeding, but claim we want enlightenment. Of course, as I understand what you mentioned here, we want to maintain these senses. Of course, without senses, without the good function of the senses, we are not in a position to practice samatha and vipassana, the Noble Eightfold Path. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and also mind could be well maintained. Let them take their own respective objects, let them work accordingly. We cannot stop that. Even the Buddha never closed his eyes for so long. He didn't go without seeing pictures. He saw them. But what he was doing there, feeding his mind with the understanding, with the wisdom, as a result, he was able to turn his mind into a position where there is no overturn. So let senses work as they are, but what we need to add is there is right understanding on sensory function. So then only we become awakened. So the problem is our perception on sensory function. If we clear our perception, if we clear our understanding, there you are. So that's what I understood from your writing here, Derek. And if I didn't address what you, as the way you want, please say it again.
Can you hear me now, Bhante?
Yes, I can hear you, Derek. Yes.
So I guess part of the point I wanted to make was that it seems like we create our hindrances. We not just the classic hindrances, but I feel that when we do this observation of our senses, that we don't see things clearly and have a breakthrough of wisdom, is because, or it may be that we want to be enlightened, but we are enmeshed and addicted to our sense pleasures. And so we look and we see, but we don't see in a way where we're prepared to become disenchanted with these observations. And that's a major thing that keeps us locked or trapped.
Indeed. Yeah, that's true. So, because even when we attain samadhi, we understand that samadhi through sensory experiences. So we want enlightenment. No, there is no doubt that everyone would say that we like to attain enlightenment, but with the sensory, the practice with the senses and their respective processes are too subtle, and sometimes in the framework of wholesomeness, kusala, we have certain things that could clinging arises, so that the determination would be there, but the practice won't be such that one could get into that enlightenment, because the sensory experiences with mind that is not fully developed can make us wrong sometimes. That's why actually we have to make sure whether we associate Kalyana Mitta. That's why we have to make sure whether we have fully understand things as they are. Time to time, we have to check ourselves whether we are in the right Dhamma, whether we practice enough, and whether we, of course, put the same thing as the Buddha said into practice. And this observation on what we have been doing is really important too.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So there are so many implications in one particular simple thing. So maybe that is because Dhamma is so vast and there are many approaches into one thing. So as the Buddha said, Pachattang Veditabba Vinyohiti, the realization of Dhamma with regard to what we experience would be different from person to person, because that is how it is. Let's try our best to hang on to the training we are in, and time to time we will be feeling it better, because that is how practice is going on. Sometimes you feel really negative in the training because you don't see any significant development of your training. Don't worry, hang on to practice, do it every day. There would be days that you feel something extraordinary. So that would gear you further to do more. That's what I really understand from those arahants in Theragata and Therigata. Their path for enlightenment were not that easy. They were so difficult, but they somehow managed to cultivate virya. And some weeks ago we talked about Pancha Indriya Dharma, 5 spiritual faculty. Of course, it is not in this Sutta study class in Sinhala Dhamma program. Sometimes we have done everything exactly as they should be, but no results at all. No significant things are felt as it should be. That is because, friends, the lack of development of Shraddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. So that is what we need to understand. Sometimes we do meditation every day exactly as it is, and no any such feeling come to us, no any encouragement building in us. Don't worry how long the Buddha practiced the Noble Eightfold Path or whatever Dhamma he has been practicing as Bodhisattva to enlighten. Uncountable number of lifetime. And even Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana, Ananda, all these great disciples of the Buddha started the training from previous Buddha's dispensation. So that only thing we need to consider is training, making things possible, so that one day, perhaps in this life or after this life, there will be a chance to break through and confirm enlightenment. So in a sense, we do not attach to the results, but we pay attention to the practice and go on. So again,
walk the path, not look at the goal.
Indeed. Yes, that's very true. So that is it for today. I think we have been in the class for 1 hour and 23 minutes. We'll be busy tomorrow with the OA program. That kind of business is really interesting because we are to practice Dhamma more and more and see whether we are strong in Sila, Samadhi, observation, and so forth, so that it doesn't make us so boring actually. So tomorrow would be the full moon day practice for us, Nikini full moon day. The real day was yesterday, but we take tomorrow to do it. And I wish you wholesome Sunday and may be able to practice Dhamma in your own, with the way you practice, with anything you do. For wise people, the activities they do, of course, under the basis of right action, right words, and right action livelihood, geared by Samadhi and so forth, so that you would be developing the Dharma and Vinaya tomorrow by taking time for it. So wish you blessings and see you next week with the with a different discourse, and we may be meeting again and again with different program during the week, but we are hopeful to have this sutta discussion, since it is a platform for us to dive into the real Dhamma with discourses, so that we are looking forward to meeting you next Saturday too. With such blessings, may you be well, happy and peaceful. May you clear your path further into Nirvana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.